So let's see. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us today for this meeting. I know some of you have been really involved in this project from the very beginning and have a lot of details that you already know about this. So this may be a little bit redundant based on what you already know, but this is a committee that's mixed up of people who have been involved from the start and people who are new to the process. So at this point, we're just going to go through how we got to where we are right now today and talk about what the goal is for this committee. And then we'll talk about what our process is going to look like moving forward. So just so you all know, this is a really brand new process for the MPO to go through to develop a project for smart scales. So you all are going to help me navigate through this, and you get to help me navigate what makes sense as far as the process goes. So thank you. I don't know if you knew that you were signing up for that, but thank you for your participation, and we'll look forward to working through this together. The first thing I wanted to do is just do some introductions so we know who's on the call. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint just so we can all follow along. So let me do that real fast. All right. You all are probably seeing, there we go. All right. And I'm going to be trying to navigate several screens at one time. So hopefully if I don't see somebody getting admitted, hopefully you will only have to wait a minute or two. So the first thing I just wanted to do was to do some introductions, and I'll start with myself. Most of you have heard from me at this point, Sandy Shackelford. I am the Director of Planning and Transportation at the PDC, and also am managing the MPO for the Charlottesville-Albemarle area. So I'm coordinating this project, but really what I'm hoping to do is just to be a facilitator and let you all really help guide what this process looks like moving forward. I also want to briefly mention or introduce Bella O'Brien. She's a brand new staff member with the PDC. I think, what is this, Bella, your third
This
week?
is my fourth day, because last week was a shorter week.
So we're really excited to have Bella joining us today for this meeting, and she'll be supporting some of the smart scale process with the MPO as well. So you might start seeing some correspondence from her here and there as well. So I don't think anybody else has joined us. So we'll just go through the committee members first, and then we can quickly talk about who else is on the call. Chuck Proctor, I don't think he's been able to join us yet, but he is our planning manager for our VDOT district, for the Culpeper district that Charlottesville is in. So he's been really involved in helping navigate the development of the feasibility study and getting us to this point so far. So he will be involved in this process moving forward. And so then I'll go ahead and Brennan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Brennan Duncan. I'm the city traffic engineer.
Looks like I misspelled your name, so we'll have to get that corrected. Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Hirsch-Ballering. I am a transportation planner at the county. I was previously at the PDC and familiar with this project.
How do I turn that? How about, I didn't see Chris Jensick. Is Chris on? Oh, okay. Tim?
Hey everybody, Tim Padalino, Chief of Parks Planning for Albemarle County. I was also involved in the feasibility study process for this, and just think it would be a transformational project for the city and the county. Happy to help move it forward however I can.
Are you guys seeing the captions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how to turn those off, but we'll just try it and see how it goes for this meeting. Okay. Dick?
Sure. I'm Dick Ruffin. I'm in the Pantops Community Advisory Committee. I have a great interest in the project, both from a recreational point of view and the potential for connectivity. I have to say, I'm really grateful for all the work that's gone before I became involved. It looks like a fabulous concept and plan. And if we can help refine it a little bit, it'd be great. But I'm grateful to all those of you who've done so much.
Thanks, Dick. Annie.
Hi, Annie Stafford, and I live in the Woollen Mills, in fact, at the intersection of Riverside and Chesapeake Street, where option 1 would begin.
Ah,
Thank you for joining us, Annie. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Whittenborn. I'm the Executive Director of the Rivanna Conservation Alliance, and we are focused on protecting the river. And I'm new to this process, so I'm interested in learning more. And we are also very interested in trying to figure out how to do some restoration in Riverview Park to preserve the banks and make the access a little bit better.
Very good. Thank you, Lisa. And Supervisor Lepisto-Kirtley, or do you want to go by B for this process?
Oh, B is fine. B. Lepisto-Kirtley. I can't even pronounce my whole name. B. Lepisto-Kirtley, supervisor from the Rivanna Magisterial District. Very much interested in our Rivanna River and conserving it, making sure that everyone will be able to enjoy the beauty of it, as some of us already do. Thank you.
And B is also here as the official appointee of the Regional Transit Partnership. Let's see, I don't think I saw Kareem join us. Kareem, you're not on, are you? Okay. All right, and I don't think Daniel Bailey joined us, and they're the planning commissioners from Charlottesville and Albemarle County. And I don't think Fran was able to join us, so we'll look forward to having her at the next meeting representing the Rivanna Trails Foundation. Stuart, last but not least.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Chuck.
Yes.
We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you in a second. Chuck, go ahead, Stuart.
Sure. Stuart Gardner. I serve as vice chair of the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee, or CTAC. Great to be here. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And Chuck, I'm glad you're able to make it. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Wait.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Are you picking me up?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Fran Lawrence. I live actually up Chesapeake Street from Annie, and I'm a longtime member of the Rivanna Trail Foundation board and one of the founding group, and also a longtime resident of the Woollen Mills.
Very good. Thank you for joining us, Fran. I thought you were a VDOT person, so I'm glad to know that you're not. But thank you for being here today.
Sure.
Sure. Very good. All right. So as I've mentioned, some of you may not be as familiar with the Smart Scale process, but basically every 2 years we have the opportunity to apply for funding for transportation improvements. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. One thing I wanted to mention is that these meetings are open to the public. So there are a number of other folks that are on the call today that are not officially members of this committee. So what we're going to do is at the end of each of these committee meetings, we're going to have an opportunity for the public to provide feedback or comments or ask questions so that they can have so that we can make sure that this is a public and transparent process and make sure that this is an opportunity to increase public engagement, not just for those of you that are on this committee, but more generally as a whole. So I'll just mention, I know there are a couple of people that have specific interests in the project that are on the call today. We have Peter Krebs with the Piedmont Environmental Council. We have Bill Emery, who's been really involved with the bike ped planning efforts in the city and the urbanized area. I know we have some other folks. I think I saw Supervisor Malik has joined us, who also represents, she represents the MPO. So welcome. And if any of you all that are not on the committee would like to say anything, please feel free to raise your hand briefly before we move on. Okay, very good. All right. So Smart Scale, for those of you that are not familiar, it's a process where every 2 years we have the opportunity to make an application to apply for funding for transportation projects throughout the state. So we're competing against other projects. So one of our goals through this process is not only to develop a concept for a bridge that we're really happy with, but to also make sure that we're considering what will be competitive as far as this grant application process goes. So we need to, so what that means is that we're going to have to weigh the things that are priorities for us against what the actual cost of developing that concept will be, because that's what determines how competitive our project will be. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the process. For this cycle of Smart Scale, this is just a roadmap that shows the general project schedule for what the MPO has developed for their process. So you can see we're in October, so we were a little bit later getting started than we hoped to. It took a little bit to identify all of the right people to be on this committee. But we have already selected the projects. So the Rivanna River crossing is one of those projects. We appointed the advisory committee and now we're meeting. And so our goal is that by the time we get to March, April, May, we'll have a pretty good idea of what the actual application is going to look like so that we can submit that as part of the application cycle. So that's what we're looking at. We want to have pretty solid recommendation to go to the policy board by March to submit as part of that application process. Okay, so your role as the stakeholder committee is as follows. First of all, this is kind of a unique mixture of people that are both representing staff and also people that are representing different interests throughout the community. So it's both a group that is intended to get citizen input and also a group that can provide some of the technical expertise related to some of the considerations. So what we would like you all to do as members of the stakeholder advisory committee is to be a liaison on behalf of the organizations or groups that you're representing. So taking information both from these meetings back to your groups to make sure that they're staying updated, and also bringing feedback from the groups that you're representing back to this committee for consideration as part of the discussion. We're going to be asking you to consider the pros and cons of the potential bridge alignments and provide guidance on what priorities we should be considering as we evaluate what those options are. You're going to be asked to provide input on how we can engage the public more generally with public outreach. And then ultimately what you're going to be doing is providing a recommendation to the policy board and the related MPO committees that will be used in developing the final Smart Scale application. So you all are going to be telling us what you think the application should look like, and we'll be taking that recommendation to the policy board. Any questions? No? Sounds good. Okay. Let's see. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of the project background, most of you know that we have a couple of alignments that we're looking at and considering right now. And those didn't just come out of nowhere. We've gone through some technical analysis to get to the point that we're at right now. So initially, when we're talking about the importance of having a crossing for bike and ped specifically across the Rivanna River, there are 3 locations that are talked about that show up in planning documents, based on whether you're looking at Charlottesville, bike ped, master plans, or small area plans for some of the growth areas. There are 3 locations that show up. We need a bridge between Dardentown Park and Penn Park, near Freebridge, and between Pantops and Woolen Mills. We decided when we requested support for making this study to start with the Pantops and Woolen Mills location. And that's because it was really important as a commuter route and was able to connect 2 significant employment sites and best accommodate alternative commuters. So we wanted to make sure that we were catering first and foremost to people that would be using this bridge for commuting purposes and make sure that we were making an important network connection between two really significant economic development sites. And so we started off, this shows a little, I know it might be a little bit hard to see on your screens, but this shows the general project area that we started with. When we scoped this project out initially, we started with this area and said, this is the general area where we want this crossing to occur. And so this is what the consultants were working within. Again, our goal was to develop feasible bridge alignments, so figure out where is this even possible, and then get a good estimate for what the cost would be. So we would know what we would be moving forward with as far as a smart scale application. And then the area was evaluated with a lot of different transportation technical analysis that the consultants go through. So they're looking at things like, what are the general trends as far as transportation activity? Where are the existing property access? Where are the development patterns? Where are the main destination points that need to be connected? That kind of thing. And then they developed, based on that initial analysis, they developed 6 potential crossing options. So this map kind of shows generally where those were initially, the 6 that were originally considered. And this map over here gives you a little bit of a reference point. So number 1 right here on this map correlates to number 1 right here on this map. So this helps you make a correlation between the picture and the map to give you a sense of reference. Here's number 4, here's number 4. So these were the 6 options that were originally reviewed. So before but we didn't want to just take this to the public right away without doing another level of evaluation. And so what happened is that the consultants came back with these 6 alignments, and they presented these to a technical committee of staff members to discuss other factors that could potentially impact feasibility. And so this technical committee reviewed these 6 original crossings and eliminated options due to existing issues that they were already aware of. So that included concerns with property ownership, accessibility issues, known protected resources, and steep grades. So there were a number of these that maybe an initial review showed that these were potentially possible to support a crossing, but if you know a little bit more about some of the specifics of the area, some of these needed to be eliminated. And so what happened is that out of the 6 options, 4 were eliminated and 2 of them remained feasible after that technical committee review. And then as we were considering the smart scale projects for this next round, there was a 3rd alignment option that was added by a member of our Citizen Transportation Advisory Committee. And so we're going to talk about that one today, but we will not have the same level of detail about that potential crossing option because it has not undergone the same level of technical analysis at this point. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is kind of a rudimentary map. Let's see. That shows generally where these different options are in comparison to each other. So we can start at the top and you'll see that all of these crossings originate on the east side on the bank of the State Farm property. And just for reference, this is the Old Mill Trail right here. So the first one is this one on the top that goes right over where it says Riverview Park. This is the one that was recommended or suggested by one of our members of our Citizen Technical or Transportation Advisory Committee. So this is the one that has not undergone the technical review by the consultants at this point. So this one would start a little bit north compared to the other 2 and would cross from this point at Old Mill Trail over to make a connection mid-block on Riverside Drive. So that's the first one at the top. The second one would start a little bit further south on the State Farm property and would intersect here at Chesapeake Drive. And then the last one would actually be a two-legged bridge. So it would have a pier on the sediment island right here. This is what's referred to as a sediment island in the middle of the river. So again, it would originate on the State Farm property, have a leg that goes onto the sediment island, and then the other leg would come out at this intersection at East Market Street. So. Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor LaPisto Kirtley. I'm not sure exactly what that's in reference to, but I'll follow up with you to see where I need to make that correction. So these are the three different alignments that we're looking at this point. All of the alignments, we can't just build a bridge though. So you can see that we have to connect the bridge to they have to have a logical termini, which means they need to connect, or we need to make sure that we provide for a connection to an existing transportation system. So they all need to connect to a road or to some sort of shared use path or sidewalk or something like that, that either meets VDOT requirements, or we're going to have to bring them up to VDOT requirements. So what that means is that any of these endpoints over here on the east side, that would be over here on the State Farm property, would need to have a connection or a path that's built to connect them to basically an existing transportation network. And so what has been recommended is that we would bring the Old Mill Trail in these sections up to the VDOT standard in these scenarios. And then we would have to construct a connection around the property to make a connection to Peter Jefferson Parkway and State Farm Boulevard, which is over here kind of in front of the State Farm building. So any of the options, regardless, would have to have that connection made as part of it. Any questions at this point? Okay.
Sandy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say that, to underscore the importance of threading any bridge project back into the transportation network with bike lanes, sidewalks, or, other, whether it's separated greenway trails or whatever. But the Old Mills Trail would probably be something that connects to this bridge. I'm not sure it can be upgraded to like a paved transportation grade pathway though. But there should be a connection between the transportation component of a bridge and the more recreational component of the Old Mills Trail, and be a tie-in to the broader transportation network and connectivity and mobility. I just would say those might be two separate goals that are kind of side by side.
Sure, yeah, that's a really good point. I think just because the Old Mill Trail is there, the assumption might be that we can just connect into it. I think the importance is that we're going to have to make those upgrades regardless. Just tying into the Old Mills Trail will not meet the requirements from VDOT. So we'll have to make sure that, and of course, since the trail system is right there, that's going to be a really important destination point that people want to be able to access. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. All right, so this is where I'm hoping, I'll go through this first one, and then I'm hoping that Jessica might be able to help me with the other ones, or any of the others of you that have been a little bit more involved on the technical side. This first project, as you'll recall, this is the one that was developed by one of our members of our MPO committees that has not undergone the same level of review as far as the technical analysis that the other ones have gone. So I don't have as much information to share with you on this one, but this is the bridge that would end up a little bit mid-block on Riverside Avenue. So one of the benefits of this bridge is that it would be completely at grade on the landing. So the importance of this one is that you wouldn't necessarily have to try to develop a ramping system to bring it back to grade. It would be a very flat bridge, and it would also likely be the least expensive option. Again, I don't have the detailed cost estimate, but it would be pretty short and would involve likely the least construction cost. But it also has potentially a significant impact on Ridgeview Park. I believe this is like the pavilion and the playground area right there in the middle. And it also comes out on a private property that's potentially a developable lot. And so there is that concern about what the impacts would be to a private property owner and to the park itself that would need to be weighed against some of those benefits. There's also a little bit of a discussion about whether it makes sense for this project to come mid-block versus at a more logical intersection. So those are some of the considerations that we'll need to discuss to determine if we want to consider this project further to do more of a technical analysis on the feasibility of this project. All right, so the next one we're looking at again would be the Chesapeake Street, a terminus point on the west side. So this is the one that was kind of in the middle. So this one would be a single truss bridge that's approximately 325 feet wide. This one has a higher clearance over the river, so it would be about 40 feet over normal river height. It has a grade of 5% or less, and it would not require in-river construction. So this does provide direct connection to Rivanna Trail, the Riverview Park parking lot, Chesapeake Street, which leads to downtown Charlottesville. And there's already a continuous sidewalk on Chesapeake on the north side. So there's already some existing pedestrian infrastructure that could, make a good pedestrian connection for the network. The cost estimate, we have to take these with a little bit of a grain of salt because these are estimates. And when we actually put these into an application, we're going to have to add a lot of contingencies. So there are a lot of unknown costs that we have to include as part of that application. So the final cost is likely going to be much higher than $11.3 million. But this gives us a good baseline for comparison purposes. And then there would need to be a right-of-way purchase from State Farm, but that's going to be true with any of the projects as well. Any questions on this one? Anything you want to add, Jessica, that I didn't cover?
Nope, you're doing great, Sandy.
Thanks. Thanks. All right. And then the third option is this East Market Street Bridge. So this is the one on the very south side.
Hey, Sandy, real quick. I think I saw B raise her hand for that last slide. Just wanted to highlight.
Sure, thank you. Go ahead, B.
Yes, I just wanted to know, actually, it was on the slide before that. And was there any reason why the one before that closes in through the private? Is there any reason why it could not and the terminus couldn't be at that? It looks like there's another road that
right here
goes. Can you show it with your?
Yeah, this would be a great time for us to have somebody that has a little bit more construction knowledge of the specific area. I believe this road is actually lower though and is in a flood area. So that could have some impacts. I don't know if Brennan, I don't know if you happen to know anything more specifically about that road.
You're talking the one right there next that leads to the park?
This one right here.
Yes,
yeah.
right here, right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything specifically about it. There would be, I think, again, I'm not completely familiar with this option, but if you're tying in there, you're going to be tying in at a lower elevation. So you're going to have to come up quicker to, if you're trying to maintain your ADA 5% and that kind of stuff, it just gets more difficult when you go steeper. And making sure that you're out of the floodplain, out of the floodway, all those are going to be concerned. So it's not that it's not possible, but there's just more. It looks to me like there's going to be more issues trying to do that than what's shown. there.
You couldn't put a raised area there where on one side it's a ramp for bicyclists and on the other side it's steps for pedestrians, but a raised area. Because otherwise I'm thinking you've got to go through private property and either A, we purchase that piece of property, or, you know, I don't know how you would get through it.
Sandy, I can jump in a little bit.
Sure.
In discussions early on with the consultants and the technical committee, there, like Brennan was saying, there was a lot of concerns about how low that parking lot / road is compared to the other side of the river. And another consideration was just the amount of infrastructure that would then have to go into the park itself in order to get people up and across the river.
Got it. Okay, but if we're using some of the other bridges, you're going to have to go up. You're going to have to go up also, or all the bridges on the land that you can just, there won't be any stairs or ramps or anything. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if it's okay, Sandy, I'll just jump in again.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the other two options don't have any stairs. It uses the bridge doesn't have any stairs to access it on either side. In order to get from the landing point on the east side up to like the State Farm area, there are some like switchbacks, like the trail has to go back and forth in order to maintain the proper grade, but no stairs.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No, good question. Thank you, B. Thank you, Jessica. Jessica, for anybody who doesn't know, Jessica worked on this project when she was at the PDC, so she has a lot of background information on it. All right. So East Market Street. So again, this is going to be a two-span bridge. So it's a little bit deceiving when you look at the map that I put together, because it looks like one side is a lot longer than the other, but each span would actually be just under 300 feet. So they'd be approximately the same. So this one has a lower clearance over the river height. So it would have a clearance of 5 feet over the normal river height for the first span, and then 1 foot over the floodplain. So it would be a lot closer to the water itself. The other challenge with this one is that it mostly maintains a grade of 5% at less, but there is a portion of the path that would have a grade of a little bit higher than 5%. So it would be a little bit more challenging to navigate as far as the grade is concerned. It does provide a direct connection to the Woolen Mills Economic Development Site. So right here, you can see this is the railroad tracks, and this is where there's a lot of the development, and the mill is over here. So sorry, I'm pointing at my screen. You all can't see that, but the mill's over here. The railroad tracks go right there. So it does have a really, really direct connection to a really important economic site. East Market Street is really narrow. And so one of the challenges would also be to determine how we can provide for some of those bike or pedestrian facilities through that area right here. So I know there are some options. We might have to be a little bit creative, but it would be really tight to try to add a facility along the road itself. We'd have to work a little bit harder to make that network connection.
I'd say it's more than just difficult, Sandy.
Yeah.
We can do it if we put our minds to it.
It's nearly impossible. So
sure. Yeah. So we might have to consider whether or not there's an option to use private property in that situation as well to complete a network connection. That there are some pretty significant challenges that we would have to work through. And then there's also.
Sorry, Sandy, I just wanted to jump in on that that budding discussion about Market Street's suitability, because I think there's an assumption that we can maybe question, does it need to be a separated off-street connection? I don't think it does. I ride my bike up and down Market Street from time to time, and there's no reason on a low volume street like that you couldn't have in-street facilities or sharrows or other kind of enhanced user safety features. And I actually think the opposite might be true. I think Chesapeake might be a lot less user-friendly and safe from, at least from a bicycle standpoint. I know there is a sidewalk on Chesapeake, but I think when we're talking about multi-locality, multi-neighborhood connectivity, maybe bicycling is more of a realistic lens to see it through than pedestrianism. And so I think we should just spend more time kind of assessing the community connections, whether it's Chesapeake or Market or possibly something else. But I just don't want to have like, hey, let's pile on Market Street. It's like, actually, that might be the top connection corridor. But I just didn't want to let that slide without saying something at the beginning of this whole planning process.
Sure, no, that's a good point. It is low volume, and I know Chuck had some suggestions about that there might be some other like creative ways that we could do that to make it a little bit more accessible to bike and pedestrian users in the area too. So there are definitely solutions that we can explore, and I think that's a good point, Tim. There's also a concern about parking along East Market Street for recreational users. So this brings up a question about whether or not the bridge is likely to generate additional demand for parking, and that's something where we're hoping it wouldn't. We're hoping that this would reduce the need for people to need to use vehicles to access some of these amenities, that it would provide greater alternative transportation options. But that is something that we'll also discuss, is what parking impacts might look like for if we put a bridge in either of these general areas. This bridge is a little bit more expensive than the other ones. The other one, you remember, was 11.3 million. This one, the estimate was 15.3 million, which makes sense. It's a longer bridge and it has more spans. So I think we want to keep those cost estimates in place. And of course, one of the things that you have to remember when you're talking about a smart scale project is projects are evaluated. They're given a benefit score based on a number of factors that's divided by the cost. And so we do want to keep cost as a consideration, but we also want to make sure that we're not putting cost as too much of a emphasis, that we're not giving the community what makes the most sense for it. But this one would be a little bit more expensive. And again, like I mentioned before, we'd have the same right-of-way concerns that we had before. Yes, Annie.
Yes, thanks. So you said that you hoped that these bridges wouldn't bring more vehicular traffic. How are you going to determine that, estimate that, figure that out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this might be a place where we could do some travel demand modeling, or look at other places that have put bridges in to see how that changes their parking demands, those kinds of things. It's going to be an imperfect analysis, but I think we can give it our best shot to try to get some information that will help inform our decision making. Anybody else have any other thoughts that they want to add? That's probably not an incredibly satisfying answer, I realize.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very important question.
It is. Yeah, we'll probably have to. One of our expectations is that we will be able to use a consultant to support some of the analysis. So we'll be able to get some support from them to see if they can develop some demand modeling or some demand predictions related to the parking. All right. Any other comments on any of these three alignments?
Can you go back? Hi, everyone. This is Kareem. Sorry. Can you go back to the Chesapeake Street option? I just want to take another closer look. Where would that come in onto Chesapeake?
Where would it come on to Chesapeake? I'm going to go back. So this gives you a general idea. It would basically, there's this turn right here. I forget what the street is, the cross street is, but it's basically where this makes the little turn.
Riverside.
Yeah.
Is that Riverside?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it would connect right at that intersection or right at that turn.
Could I ask a question, Sandy?
Yeah, go ahead, Dick.
I'm thinking about the option down at Woollen Mills and coming in near where the tunnel goes under the railway. Have those who've looked into it explored the option of going under the tunnel to where the wool factory now is and alongside Willow Tree and up to Broadway via some way through the parking area, whether that is a feasible way to take people from that particular option without going up East Market, going around by the wool factory and beside Willow Tree and up to Broadway. Has that been explored? Is it at all feasible, and would it be a good idea?
I don't know that it's been explored at this point. I think that that might be a little bit beyond just looking at the bridge and the connection. I don't know if any of the others that were more involved in the first phase of this project have anything else to add to that. It hasn't been discussed to this point as far as I know. I don't know if that's a general discussion for something that's being considered for access in general, but that's something that we could certainly discuss of whether that makes sense to improve the transportation connectivity should a bridge go there.
I really suggested I'll think about it because Broadway is so broad.
Sure.
It's easy to have bike paths and things, whereas the others are really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, I think that's a great consideration to kind of study further. And I think the county's Broadway blueprint includes, streetscape improvements and some placemaking elements to make Broadway not only a destination, but a better connection between Woollen Mills and Belmont and downtown and beyond. On a slightly separate but related note, I think as we kind of, evaluate the different options and the strengths and the weaknesses, it doesn't seem like one of the bridge options has to automatically be paired with any of the associated community connections. So if it turns out that the bridge that lands at Chesapeake is more favored, it doesn't necessarily mean that the community connections need to go up Chesapeake, or vice versa. If it lands at Woollen Mills and everybody determines, hey, Chesapeake is the best way to get people downtown, you can still find ways along those roads with the proper signage and any other, inexpensive improvements.
Yeah.
To find the right way through those neighborhoods. And it doesn't have to be a binary choice, I don't think.
Sure.
Andy, I have a question, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Is there any concern that the State Farm building is not actually owned by State Farm, but is owned by a private investor or a private investment company? How difficult they might be to deal with?
Yeah, from what I understand, the county has some existing relationships with the owner of the company, and I think there are also some existing. Well, I shouldn't speak about this because I'm not sure that it's completely accurate. Jessica, do you have anything you want to say, or Tim, about that?
I haven't been as involved in those discussions, so I can't speak to it either, but I can have more information at our next meeting.
Sure. We'll make a note to address that moving forward, to address that concern.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else before we move on? Oh goodness, I'm so sorry. Okay, I was just looking at some of the comments to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'll go back and
Good luck.
look at some of those at the end. All right, so what we're going to talk about is really what we're going to do as part of this committee. The next step, so at the next meeting, what we're going to be spending our time doing is really prioritizing how do we make a decision between the options that are presented to us. So what we're going to spend some time talking about is which factors do we need to prioritize as we consider which of the options makes the most sense. So we've developed this list with the MPO committees. We developed what we think are a number of considerations that would be important for this project to consider. And this is how we could start evaluating what the impacts would be with some of these options. So what we'll need to do as part of this group is to really talk about what out of this list, and maybe some others that you all identify as also needing to be factors to consider, what are the priorities that we're hoping to achieve through this bridge? And so some of the ones that we came up with, some of these obviously are going to be, we're required to meet them. We're going to be required to make sure that the bridge is ADA accessible. We're going to be required to make sure that it connects to the larger transportation network. So some of those are just going to be requirements that we don't really have a lot of negotiating room on. The others of these, we can really sort of start pinpointing what are the most important things that we want to consider as far as the bridge alignment. So here's a list that we can start with to discuss. Do we want to make sure that we are minimizing impacts to the floodplain? Do we want to focus on how this bridge looks to the community and whether it is what that impact is going to be, given that the river is a scenic resource? What are the impacts to the public, both the impacts to Riverview Park and to the surrounding neighborhood? What potentially are the resiliency concerns? Is there one option that maybe provides better resiliency than another one, given some of the environmental factors? What are going to be the long-term maintenance and replacement and inspection costs associated with either of these options? What are the environmental impacts? What will this do as far as coordination with planned recreational uses for the river? How does transit fit into this? How can we make sure that this bridge ties into not just our road network and our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, but how does it tie into transit? And does it improve accessibility for people who might not have a car at all to be able to get to more places, for example? We talked about parking. We also talked about water safety impacts. So for people who are using the river recreationally, are any of these going to be more likely to create additional hazards than another one, for example? So this is a list to start off with, thinking through. I know you all may not have had a lot of time to process through it at this point, but is there anything else you can think of at this point that maybe should be a consideration that isn't included on this list?
This is Stuart Gardner. I would say that, and you kind of touched on it about connecting to existing infrastructure, but which of the three would receive the most bike and pedestrian traffic? Simply which scenario would get the most usage? I think that's something we should definitely prioritize, because a great bridge that nobody uses isn't much good.
And with that, Stuart, I like that point. This is Dick. A vision is certainly to increase commuter use by other than car. And so the consideration of connectivity to places of work, to good arteries for getting into town, seems to me that should be a pretty high priority. We're not there now. Not a lot of people do commute by bicycle now, but in 10 years, can we do something with this bridge which will in part incentivize greater use of alternative transport? That's kind of hidden in these other factors that you've mentioned, Sandy, but I think if we focus a little bit on that, incentivizing alternative modes of transport for commuters with a 5 or 10 year line of vision, that could be useful.
Sure. Any other? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think that it may or may not be useful to commuters, but I think it's going to be very attractive to recreational walkers and bikers. I bike and walk myself. I've lived here for 20 years. So I think that this travel demand modeling is going to be very important to have done. And maybe that reflects different use in either option. That's a possibility. Something that we haven't mentioned, and I'm sorry that Chris isn't on the call, is that I know that the city has talked about creating a boat ramp on the Rivanna at the end of Chesapeake Street. So I would be very interested in hearing how that connects to the planning for this. It seems as though you can't do one without the other.
Sure.
And I've looked at the maps rather carefully, and I don't really see the connections between the ends of the bridges and the pavement, you know, where they actually connect. And so I would be interested in seeing those.
Yeah, that it might not have been developed in that much detail at this point. That might be part of once it's moved forward. I don't know if Jessica or Tim or any of you that were involved in the first phase a little bit more closely than I was. If you have any more information to know, I don't think that was developed at this point, though.
I think a lot of these kind of beat around the proverbial bush. Really, what I think we should be focusing on is how VDOT scores these, because we can design a perfect bridge, but if the cost versus the scoring for VDOT doesn't match up, we're not going to get the funding for it. So, you know, we really have to kind of keep that at the forefront of a lot. I mean, like you said, a lot of these are have to do, you know, ADA accessibility, trail connectivity, floodplain, flood resiliency, environmental, like all of those, like it doesn't matter which bridge, which location we do, all of those are impacts. But, you know, when we're talking about an option that's 10 million versus an option that's 15 or 20 million, you know, that when you divide the cost by the score, because really no matter what we do for the bridge itself, the score that you're going to get through VDOT is going to be very similar no matter which option we choose. So, you know, when you increase the cost of the bridge by 50%, you're lowering your odds of actually getting that project by almost 50, maybe not quite 50%, but you know, it lowers your score dramatically. So just putting that out there for everybody.
Spoken like a true engineer. Thank you. No, that is a really important point. It could be because our goal is to, you know, moving this forward. We want a project that will be feasible and implementable and will be competitive. Was there another comment?
Oh, Sandy, I wanted to, this is Lisa. Yeah. I definitely think we need to look at the environmental, water quality impacts and habitat impacts potentially of these options. But I also want to think about this a little bit in terms of opportunities and what other benefits this project might be able to leverage in these areas. For example, you know, if this went through, not through Riverview Park, but the one off of Chesapeake Street, could we potentially build off of that project and do some riverbank stabilization work there? I think, you know, this is a project that could potentially help draw in other funding to improve that area, which is the only public access point we have in the city to the river. So I think we need to think about the opportunities too, not just the drawbacks of these options.
Sure. Any other comments?
Yeah, Sandy, I'll share. I agree with what everybody has said. So at the risk of sounding redundant, I'll just emphasize what I was going to share, which was it's not on this list, but as Stuart and others have said, connectivity is number one. You know, I think you kind of framed this whole project as these options were actually whittled down from a broader project scope because they are the best connections between Woolin Mills and Pantops, generally would serve the best purpose. So just not losing sight of that and making sure that's always our kind of focus is connectivity for the bridge location. But then right alongside that is the connectivity into the, you know, the community connections and the streetscape improvements and whatever else might have to happen. I would say maybe even enlarging the project scope to have appendages or tendrils that kind of go along some of these streets or go into Pantops to include funding for those community connections to make sure that people can leave their homes and either commute or Annie was saying, like, ride your bike to Woolin Mills to have a beverage at wherever or get a baked good or run an errand on the weekends, just reducing vehicle trips in general and not just commuting. And then I think trying to have it be, you know, a piece of infrastructure that is also an asset for the recreational amenities, like whether it's the Old Mills Trail or Riverview Park or others. So if there was going to be the need for parking, you know, that could be parking that serves these bridge visitors, but also visitors who are going to park, use the bridge and continue on elsewhere down existing trails. And then I just think aesthetics kind of gets at it, but you know, a major bridge like this would be transformational. And so incorporating some element of placemaking or public art or other ways to make it kind of beautiful and harmonious and like a real true asset, like an iconic thing, while keeping it, you know, cost efficient as much as we can. Because as Brendan was saying, I think cost efficiency is critical. It helps me narrow down my preferences between the two options identified and studied so far.
Sure.
Thanks.
Any other comments? I'm going to, let's see. I know we have Katie Whalen on the phone right now. Katie, I don't know if you want to speak to the question that came up about the relationship with the State Farm property and you know, opportunities to what that relationship might look like. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I can speak kind of adjacent to it, and
Sure.
I'm here representing Bonamos, and we are a subtenant of State Farm, who's a tenant of the owner. Right, so as you know, State Farm has vacated that building, and they are looking for subtenants. And Bonamos is a biotech startup here in Charlottesville, and will be the first tenant. So we're really interested in this project because we really see ourselves entering the building as hopefully being like the first of many. As if anyone familiar with the building knows, it's an enormous building, 300,000 square feet, and we're only taking 50,000 of it. So we hope to see other startups come into that space, you know, in the biotech or in the food space, and just making that Pantops area a bit more accessible. I could see bike commuters coming from, you know, living downtown and coming over the river that way. Our experience with the owner of the building has been really positive, excellent to work with them. So I would imagine that they'd be pretty well aligned with this project. And it really fits into this kind of vision that we've both agreed on for the future of that building.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
Not a problem.
Well, a question, Sandy.
Yeah.
Who is working on the question of cost reduction possibilities through easements? A lot of that State Farm property owned by the Chicago developer, Chicago real estate firm, a lot of that is not buildable. And I would have thought we might get some significant cost savings through an easement approach. And I don't know who would do that or how it would be done. I just know how it's been done elsewhere in the state. So thinking of it.
Those would probably be conversations that started with Albemarle County and VDOT. We'd want to start with folks who have existing relationships and build off of that. And then VDOT has a whole department that works on property acquisition and things like that that would probably be involved at that point. So we'd have those conversations with those folks. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Just to that point, both of the bridge conceptual plans that were done as part of the preceding feasibility study, they showed the bridge landing on county-owned property because there is a significant chunk of land along the river that, you know, we could have one of the bridge abutments and tie in there.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to point out that it's some of the easement or other acquisition discussions are related to connecting into the community as opposed to the bridge as a structure itself.
Right, but you can't build a bridge without the connection, so they are connected, so.
It's
There
a long
will
path.
have to be easement or right of way or something that's connected over to the road over there.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments or feedback? All right. All right. Well, the last thing we'll talk about before we open it up to the more general public comments is that the goal is to meet monthly through February or March. We'll see if we need that March meeting, but we'll probably also be planning a public meeting to go through all of the smart scale projects that are going to be submitted in late February or early March, regardless. So, so I know we got this meeting in late in November, but I can send out a meeting poll instead of trying to maybe figure this out on the meeting. But I think it would make sense that we either try to meet in December or maybe we double up in January to try to get 2 meetings in to make sure we have enough time to go through everything. So do you all see any concerns with that? No. Okay. Took a little bit longer to get us started. So we want to make sure that we have enough time to go through everything. All right. Any other comments before we open up the public comments? All right. Does anybody who's not officially on the committee have any comments they'd like to make at this point? Going to. Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. I'm Peter Krebs from the Piedmont Environmental Council. The regional bicycle pedestrian plan that is what sort of spawned this whole process was a joint activity by the planning district and PC. My role with the regional plan is, as I see similar here, which is bringing people into the conversation, agnostic, and in fact, not only do I want to see this project get done, but my code of ethics as a planner requires that I simply bring forward information that's missing, or for example, like pointing out that there is a Broadway blueprint, that sort of thing. But I'm not here to judge the process at all. I would recommend that the committee think about as well, which is in addition to having this thing score well, VDOT wants this to be a project that has 0 surprises going forward. That there are knowns and then there are unknowns. We need to be sure that we know about the unknowns and have a reasonable path to solving them. Don't need to have every answer, but we also don't want to be blindsided by new things. So by having a diverse committee, you're setting yourselves up well to bring in different kinds of wisdom and different kinds of information. And one of the things that we always are thinking about, to be thinking about, is who is missing, who holds essential information that ought to be a part of this process. So like as you're reflecting on this, think about who else needs to be in the room, and that'll really help the whole thing to be successful. Furthermore, a couple of
Oh, Peter, when you look away, we have trouble hearing you. If you can just,
Sorry.
no problem.
Okay. Yeah, so I won't look away anymore. It's good to think about this comprehensive approach. So you're thinking about it in terms of comprehensive geography, which is important. Also thinking about it comprehensively from a social perspective. So you have already mentioned correctly that this is both a transportation and a recreational project, both at the same time. It's also, you know, Centerra sees it as a health, a pro-health project and economic development. And so that's why this project was sort of rose to the top. It checks a whole bunch of boxes that correspond with what Smart Scale is looking for. So that's really smart. And also thinking about it maybe as a way to spawn new opportunities for the river. I think maybe it was Lisa that mentioned that this could be a catalytic project that changes lots of things and opens new opportunities. So I guess that's it. One other thing that I'll just offer is that I have the consultant's technical drawings open on my computer. So if there's like detailed geography questions, I can share those, but this is Sandy's meeting and I'm gonna stop talking now.
Thank you, Peter. Any other comments or questions? For those of you that are joining us from the public, I am putting my email address in the chat. So if you would like to be added to the distribution list for future meeting notifications, please feel free to send me a quick email and I'll make sure that you are included on any future meeting notifications. But otherwise, I'll give one last chance. Oh, thank you, Visor. Thank you, Supervisor Lipis. I'm sorry, B. Thank you, B. Spelling error. I will make sure that that's updated in the future meetings. All right. Any other last comments before we wind up for today?
Will you send us the slides?
Yeah, I'd be happy to send you the slides. And this will also be posted, the recording of the meeting will also be posted onto the website. So all of this information will be available to go back and look at later. So I will send out a meeting poll for, we'll see if we can sneak a December meeting in. And then we will plan to meet to talk about priorities at our next meeting. And otherwise, thank you all for joining us. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and have a relaxing post-Thanksgiving week.
Thanks very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you all.